David Haye just did this interview on the Seconds Out YouTube channel with Radio Raheem, and according to him, Derek Chisora told him that Dillian Whyte would fail a PED test about a week ago, and that he, as in Derek Chisora, would replace Dillian Whyte as Anthony Joshua's opponent. Now, if this is true, then surely Eddie Hearn will have known at least a week ago as well. And yet, he continued selling pay-per-views and continued selling tickets for the event. So questions have to be asked there. Apparently, Eddie Hearn's going on Talk Sport to be grilled by Simon Jordan in the coming week. That could be interesting. The question here is, who will Anthony Joshua fight? Will it be Derek Chisora? Personally, I think that's a terrible fight. It doesn't prepare him in any way stylistically for a Deontay Wilder, and I don't think it gives him the confidence boost that he needs either, because Derek Chisora is a friend of Anthony Joshua. It, I have to imagine, would turn out to be a sparring session between them, where neither one of them is really trying to hurt the other. It would be a farce. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the fight goes ahead and it turns out to be a barn burner. I very much doubt it, but in my head, I'm thinking that would just be a glorified sparring session. And then you're going to put it on pay-per-view? No way. That would be the scandal upon all scandals, right? The scandal above all scandals. No way. Anthony Joshua, as a contender, he's not a champion, so there's no moral obligation to match him as tough as you would match a champion. When Lennox Lewis came back after being knocked out by Oliver McCall, they didn't match him like a champion. They gave him 2 journeymen to build up his confidence again. Lionel Butler and Justin Fortune. Then they gave him a slight step up against a faded Tommy Morrison before giving him his first tough fight since the McCall loss in Ray Mercer. That was his 4th comeback fight before they actually put him in with someone tough. This is the great Lennox Lewis. Same thing with Mike Tyson. They didn't throw Mike Tyson straight back in the deep end after he was knocked out by Buster Douglas. They gave him some easier fights first. Henry Tillman was a nice, easy knockover job for him. Alex Stewart was a slightly better fighter, but it still ended in 1 round before they eventually stepped Mike Tyson up against Razor Ruddock, you see? So when you are a contender, you're not morally obligated to fight the best out there. Why? Because you are not holding up the heavyweight division by having these rebuilding fights. Whereas a champion who decides to cherry pick and he's being aided and abetted by his sanctioning body in cherry picking and not giving worthy contenders a title shot, he is holding up the division. You see the difference? So Anthony Joshua coming back from the defeats to Usyk, still dealing with the ghosts of Andy Ruiz in his mind. He needs these rehabilitation fights. He needs these confidence builders before he makes another run at the title. The problem is, Anthony Joshua, it would seem, is very greedy. And so is Eddie Hearn, DAZN, and so on. That's why they're looking to do these pay-per-view fights during Anthony Joshua's rebuilding process. But easier opponents are not going to be sellable on pay-per-view. The public ain't gonna go for that. So it comes down to Anthony Joshua, Eddie Hearn, and so on, being willing to take a pay cut. And I think Anthony Joshua, if he knows what's good for him, should take a pay cut, put it on regular DAZN, and fight a Gerald Washington or somebody like that. Yeah, because the public will rightfully be upset, annoyed, etc. if he tries to fight a Derek Chisora on a pay-per-view. That's ridiculous. And as far as fighting Hergovich or someone like that, if they'd put Lennox Lewis, after he was knocked out by Oliver McCall, straight in against Riddick Bowe or Holyfield or one of the top fighters in the division, Lewis would have been beaten, probably knocked out, in my view, because his confidence was totally shot. You could see that in the Lionel Butler fight. But because they brought him back the right way, they didn't just throw him straight back into the deep end, he was able to build his confidence back up. And then when he did challenge for the title again in the rematch with Oliver McCall, he was able to win, and then he was able to go on a decent run. So that's the way you bring a fighter back whose confidence is shot. You don't just throw them straight back into the deep end. I've compared it before to teaching somebody to swim. Certain people have an aptitude for swimming. So you could throw them in a swimming pool and they'll be able to thrash around and stay afloat and get from one end to the other. They have a natural aptitude for it. If you take that same person and then throw them in the middle of the Atlantic, yeah, they might be able to tread water for a while, thrash around and survive for a little bit, but it's going to be a battle for survival. They're eventually going to drown because they haven't been taught the correct technique. So if somebody, let's say, nearly drowns in that scenario, you fish them out of the water, do you throw them straight back in the Atlantic again? Of course you don't. You take them to a swimming pool in the shallow end, you teach them proper technique, and only once they've mastered that technique do you throw them back in the ocean again, right? Anthony Joshua was thrown in the ocean. He drowned against Andy Ruiz. He drowned again against Alexander Usyk. And so why people think it's a good idea to throw him straight back in the ocean again against the Hrgoviches, I don't know. I mean, maybe people want to see him get beat again, and that's fair enough, right? Whatever you find entertaining. But personally, because I am a student of boxing and a student of heavyweight boxing in particular, I've seen the way they brought back the Lennox Lewises, the way they brought back the Mike Tysons. And I think, well, why not do the same with AJ? Why not bring him back the way they were brought back? It worked for them. So, why not do it with him? I want to see fighters at their best face each other rather than a fighter who is having confidence issues going up against somebody who's absolutely on top of their game in terms of confidence, psychologically. So that's my take on it. But again, it all comes down to how greedy Anthony Joshua, Eddie Hearn, and DAZN want to be. If they're sensible and they're willing to take, particularly Anthony Joshua, a pay cut and get paid, I don't know, a third of what he might have made against Dillian Whyte, do it on regular DAZN, fight a Gerald Washington. Yeah, there might be a few grumbles, but at the end of the day, DAZN subscribers are not having to pay extra. And you get a fighter in Washington who is 6'6", athletic, he can move a bit, he can box a bit. That's much better preparation for Deontay Wilder than fighting Derek Chisora, where, again, in my mind, that's just going to be a glorified sparring session, a move around between two friends. And it's not really going to help your confidence because you're not really trying to hurt him and he's not really trying to hurt you. You need to get a confidence builder whereby you can go in there and demolish somebody. If he fought Gerald Washington, I seriously doubt he'd be pulling his punches. So that's my take on it. But again, the main thing that people are going to be focusing on here, and rightly so, is the fact that David Haye claims Derek Chisora told him a week ago that Dillian Whyte was going to fail a PED test, but Eddie Hearn continued selling tickets, DAZN continued selling pay-per-views, and so on. And as I mentioned in the previous video about this story, Ade on his YouTube channel was kind of being a bit mysterious about why they hadn't put the full version of the face-off between AJ and Dillian Whyte out. He just kept saying, I don't know what that's all about. Now, obviously, if he had knowledge of the situation, he wouldn't be able to say, presumably for legal reasons. Maybe that was him dropping some breadcrumbs. I don't know. You'd have to ask Ade, right? And maybe he still couldn't say even now because obviously he works for DAZN. So this is really going to be a big talking point. There's a lot of views on this video already. And let me know what you guys think about it. Also, let me know what you think about Derek Chisora as an opponent for Anthony Joshua. To me, that's just terrible. Terrible. If he is going to fight Derek Chisora, you cannot put that on pay-per-view. That would just be so scandalous. That would be unbelievably greedy by everyone involved. And look, at the end of the day, if you don't think something is pay-per-view worthy, you don't pay for it. Don't like it, don't pay. You're under no obligation to pay. But DAZN are supposed to be delivering high-quality boxing content, and yet this is what the subscribers are met with. Oh yeah, we're going to put Anthony Joshua and Derek Chisora behind an additional paywall. You don't get to see that as part of your £20 a month DAZN subscription. Do you know what I mean? It feels like an insult to DAZN subscribers, putting that extra barrier of entry on that fight. So anyway, I'll leave it there. Let me know what you guys think.